city is trying to ease tensions even as an active manhunt is underway for whoever shot those two officers Wednesday night. Residents recognize that there are issues, but some insist the city isn't as divided as many may think it is.
Ferguson residents, for the most part, we get along, black, white, Asian, whatever color, we get along.
As far as I'm concerned, I think race relations are really good. There are difficulties there, but it isn't the total picture.
John Gaskin is a Ferguson native and a community activist. Wesley Lowery is a reporter with the Washington Post. Thank you both for being with me. And Wesley, let's start with you. You're in Ferguson. Do you agree with those residents that by and large the city is not divided?
I think it's hard to make the argument that there's not some divides here in the city. I think that what we've seen in parts of Ferguson, people are still confused as to why there is so much unrest, why people are so upset. I mean, many parts of white Ferguson have always been skeptical of many of the things being said by these protesters and protest groups. Meanwhile, the groups that have gathered behind where I am now, outside of the Ferguson Police Department, have insisted that the Department of Justice report didn't do enough. They still want to see Darren Wilson in handcuffs. And so it's hard to make the argument based on the interviews I've done, the people I've talked to, that there's not some divides here and there's still not a bit of a gap along racial lines in terms of how residents of Ferguson perceive the town they live in.
And John, what's your sense of how the shooting has impacted the movement and the relationship between police and locals?
Well, last night, as you know, hundreds were in front of the Ferguson Police Department for a prayer vigil, asking for calm, asking for prayer, asking for healing for those officers that were injured in the shooting the other night. People are making it very clear that those types of blunders, those types of actions are not helping where it is that we need to go. The struggle is not about keeping score. It's about calling for reforms and about calling for accountability, not retaliating or trying to get revenge in such a terrible situation as we saw the other night.
And John, when you're talking about the desire to see reform, what reforms do you think would have to be implemented?
So those types of reforms are proper oversight. Many of the recommendations that the DOJ's report, so sensitivity training, making sure that officers that have been accused of excessive force are dealt with accordingly, and there is a level of accountability from within the police department and over the police department. One of the other levels of accountability is getting rid of those traffic quotas. As you know, the Ferguson Police Department had very racist practices in terms of disproportionately ticketing and arresting African Americans. The quotas must go. Another thing that we are looking for is to simply stop policing for profit. So ensuring that we do have community policing and policing that is sincere, looking out for people within the community, not simply trying to write them a traffic ticket.
And Wesley, meanwhile, there is an investigation underway as to who was behind the shooting of these two police officers that really survived by miracle.
Yeah.
What do we know about the investigation?
Well, one of the officers shot in the head, in the face, and so, I mean, some serious injuries here. We know the police have some leads, but no suspects in custody currently. They had raided a home not far from Ferguson PD yesterday, however, and detained 3 people. However, all 3 of them have been released with no charges. And so last I heard from police officials and from sourcing is that they're still following leads, still a very active investigation. You're seeing a lot of, whether it be SWAT teams, whether it be investigative teams, tactical teams, out and about in Greater Ferguson today, but what we know is as we wake up this morning, no one in custody and no solid suspect has been named or identified, and very little information released publicly so far about who might have done this.
Wesley Lowery and John Gaskin, thank you both. It's good to see you both. Appreciate you being with me this morning.